Clearly I'm a novice at this because I threw to a clip of the prosecutor's opening and it was like a snooze fest. I don't know if you at home agree with me, but certainly I am not persuaded by this prosecutor. Let's talk about what we know in this case. The victim, the grown victim, was associated with a known drug cartel, and she was what's called a transporter. So when she would transport the drugs, she would skim a little bit off, so she would keep some of the cocaine for herself. And this, of course, aggravates the drug lords. So it's very likely that somebody could have wanted to kill her for this or wanted the money back, and if she couldn't make payment, that they're going to get her. One of the things that I've learned as a defense attorney is that narcotics trafficking is a very dangerous profession to be in. And sure, maybe we shouldn't call it a profession, but I'm going to bring in our guest now. He is from California. His name is Adam Sostrin, and he is, like myself, a criminal defense attorney. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, it's so great to be with you. So let's talk about some of the judge's rulings in this case. The judge is going to allow in testimony of a known drug cartel member who said that he ordered the hit from jail on Brandy Peters' life. 2, DNA evidence from another drug cartel member was found at the scene of the crime. And 3, most likely the judge is going to order a force order, meaning that two witnesses who don't want to come to court to testify, they're in prison, so the judge is most likely going to order that they be brought into court to testify with use of force because they both admitted to killing Brandy Peters and the children. What do you think about all of this?
Well, I mean, doesn't it all seem like in a way, the defense attorney is sort of creating a theory that it's sort of a rush to judgment. There are so many other people, so many other interesting factors in this case that don't involve the defendant who's charged. I mean, how often is it that you have a victim who's actually involved in, drug and weapons trafficking? You have numerous statements regarding other culpability with respect to the crime. So there is an issue, a real issue with reasonable doubt that the defense has been successful at crafting, I believe.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you. I think that the issue here is there are too many questions. We don't absolutely know beyond a reasonable doubt that Henry Segura is the person that perpetrated these horrific acts. Now, the prosecution's theory is that he owed approximately $20,000 in back child support. Is that a reason to murder somebody? Possibly, but what do you think the defense is going to do in this case to continue to highlight that there's reasonable doubt? Who do you think they'll call?
Well, first of all, going to the motive, I just can't imagine that a jury is going to believe that this person's going to kill their own son. There were 3 children. One of them was the son of the defendant because he doesn't want to pay child support to his ex. So they don't have a strong motive in this case. As far as other bases for reasonable doubt, well, it would certainly be the other 2 people that claim to have been involved that the judge is going to order out, so the defense can have more of a case in front of the jury to show that the defendant's not involved. And also with respect to the partial DNA match, which is so interesting, that there was actually at least another person who may have been present.
And what do you think that the prosecution is going to do here to try to prove their case? In their opening statement, which I accidentally had our staff here play for 15 minutes, despite it being extremely tedious to listen to, I hope that the prosecutor...
I'm so tedious.
I hope that the prosecutor gets to be a bit more uplifting and emotional. There's so much you can do in a case like this as the prosecutor. He tried to focus in on the fact that there were 3 innocent children that were murdered. But how would you handle that as a prosecutor, if you were to be a prosecutor?
If I were to be a prosecutor, which I never would be, you have to try to create a reason for the defendant's conduct. So what else can you say except for the fact that children were involved? Let's say, this is the prosecution's theory. The defendant did what he did because he was such a vile person that he didn't want to make payments and that he killed them. So you're trying to tug at the hearts of the jurors.
And how do you
But it's not really great. But nonetheless, I mean, there are issues with respect to, his ex-girlfriend saying that, this guy was looking for a firearm only days before the incident. So those are the things that I would sort of hit on. Well, yeah, it's hard to understand the motive, but at the same time, why is he asking for a gun?
Right, and I believe that the prosecution in their opening statement said that another individual, who most likely will testify or else they wouldn't speak about, is going to tell the jury that they too either saw the Henry Segura with a weapon or that he was asking about a weapon. So, here we have these 3 beautiful children, but like you said, one of them was Henry Segura's own children. Now, in your experience, do you work with the defense of a lot of narcotic traffickers, or?
I do, yeah, I do drug sale cases.
And from your experience, it is, would you agree with me that it is a really violent area of the law, and that people really do go to great lengths to make sure that they're able to continue trafficking, so the head of the organization is going to use a lot of violence?
Well, I mean, that's why it's so scary, even when there's small quantities of drugs that are involved, often the prosecution would like a statement from the defendant saying, well, where did you get these drugs from? But, no one really wants to say anything because the consequences can be so severe. So they are scary cases, whether it's a small quantity, and of course when it's a large quantity of drugs.
I once had a realization while I was working on a federal narcotics matter where I realized that the reason that the sentencing is so harsh for people that are involved in drug crimes is because there is so much violence. People use traps, so they'll put the weapons, they'll put the drugs in a trap that could explode, causing great harm to other people. Here, it's interesting that Brandy Peters, she was 26, 27 years old, was the one that was transporting the drugs, and I've found that a lot of times the transporters do happen to be attractive women because they're going to fly under the radar. Have you seen anything similar in the cases that you've handled?
Well, of course. It's so common to involve, a female in cases like this. At the same time, going back to the trial, it makes the victim, unfortunately, a lot less sympathetic.
But I do think the fact that, I agree, we should go back to the trial. I do think that the fact that there were children here is a huge issue. I'm curious about the relationship between the father and the child that it was murdered. I don't know how often he was seeing that child. I know that the defense in their opening statement said that, yeah, this is a guy that's not the best possible guy. He fathered children outside of his marriage. He was married at the time, and his child with his wife, I believe, died. So he made a vow to behave better, but he didn't behave better. So I wonder how that's going to come into play during the trial and what the prosecution is going to do with that.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good point to raise, but at the same time, I mean, there are so many broken families, and just because you have the defense can just say because you have a broken family doesn't mean you don't love your child any less, and that'd certainly be my tact in this case.
And I know in this case that the police found inside the home a Walmart bag which contained shell casings, but I don't believe that those shell casings have actually been tied to the crime. Do you have any input on that?
I don't either, and I was actually reading the same articles about it and wondering about it. So I think because the prosecution hasn't raised it, I think in fact that it is probably unrelated to the crime. But that doesn't, of course, mean that that the defendant did in fact fire a weapon that day when the incident occurred. But yeah, the fact that it's unrelated is something that I would absolutely jump on in this case. I
fully agree with you. Adam, we're actually going to go live back into the trial. Hopefully you'll still be with us when we have a break.